Wait. Oh, yep. Okay, that's working. Oh, thank God. I was about to say, I'm like, oh God, please tell me it's actually working and it's not doing something stupid. And it did do something stupid. Okay, so how's everybody doing today? I guess we can go ahead and swap over the scene real quick. How's everybody doing? Oh my God. My model looks like he's scrunched. Probably because I moved too much. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully everyone's doing well. Not much today. I was going to play Metroid Prime 4, but I'm kind of late. I'm a bit late on the starting time, so we're going to have to just, we're just going to chat a little bit. So, nothing I can really think of doing. I guess I could probably play something while I chat about, but I don't know what to do. Mainly because, usually I would play something like FF14 or something like that, but I don't know if I have one of those games installed that would allow me to do something like that. I guess I could do Minecraft, but Actually, do I even have Minecraft installed on this computer? I don't remember if I do or don't. We'll put you guys over there, so it's at least right there. Let's see here. Do I have the Minecraft? I actually don't have Minecraft installed on this computer. Interesting. But I have CurseForge. How do I not have Minecraft? Okay. I have Overwolf installed. And CurseForge, but I don't have Minecraft? I may just not have the default launcher for Minecraft. I usually end up just playing it normally. Anyway, how are we doing today? How's everybody's day been going? My day's been rough. Let's just say that. Work had me I worked until past start time, normal start time. Then I had to go get my other Jeep back from the mechanic, which it's now fixed. Yay, it's now fixed. So that's nice. And then, yeah, no, I just ate. So I ate as soon as everything was starting up, so I didn't have to worry about that. So there's that. So yeah, that's kind of been my day so far. Today's Monday, so everything's been meh. Fine so far? Yeah. Everything's been just going, I would have to say. Mainly because But yeah, Mondays are usually the worst days because we get a lot of more packages and mail than normal. And yes, I'm a postman. That is my day job. I do this for fun. Oh, I just realized that my model is not sitting on the... There we go. Why is it... What was that? Okay, I don't know why my model hasn't been sitting on the frickin' on the Oh, it's not in full screen. That'll do it. Okay, there we go. I have been fixed. Yeah, no. Things are... But yeah, today was a bit rough. It's been a rough one. But yeah, in order for me to go pick up my Jeep, I had to wait for somebody to actually give me a ride. But I didn't get done till like 5:17, and the mechanic closes at 5:30, so paid that bill. Pretty much paid over $1,000 in order to get that fixed. Well, not really. Paid a lot of money to get that fixed. Mainly because it was the fuel pump. Fuel pump went out. So that was fun. Fuel pump finally went out, or at least was dying when that was going on. Why is my mic still stating that I'm like throwing? Okay, that should be a little bit better. Hopefully I don't blow your guys' ears out now. At least that's what OBS keeps telling me, is that I'm blowing your guys' ears out. But yeah, that's what's technically been happening IRL stuff. Mainly getting that fixed so that I can stop driving the new Jeep on the routes. And yeah, today I was on one of the heavier routes. I had like 240, no. How many packages did I don't remember. I had over 200 packages that I had to sort and somehow shove into my Jeep, which I did. I got all of them in my Jeep. Don't ask me how. It happened though. And then after that, it was like 3 full mail trays of just mail. Although I was able to condense it down into 2 bigger trays, so that was kind of nice. Although technically, actually, it was probably more. No, it was 2.5. 2.5 big trays that I had to do that with. But yeah, that's how everything's been going for my day. My day's been a bit rough. Always rough. Always rough to do things in. Always rough to do things in. But yeah. Wonder why that wasn't right for a minute there. Oh yeah. So there is, I guess we could probably discuss some things, mainly, probably some, I guess it would just be kind of advice for, like, some of the TTRPGs that I know. We could discuss about that. It's not like that's gonna be anything different than what we actually have going on right now. But do note that my context is based off of Pathfinder 1st Edition and to an extent Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. So I do know D&D 5th Edition, but I haven't played enough to really... Well, I did DM it once, but in my honest opinion, I don't really think I've actually done much with it. Although Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition does hold well to a more narrative style game compared to things like Pathfinder 1st Edition. Although, if you're looking for a character that hyperfixates and, well, not hyperfixates, but is very good at one specific thing, Pathfinder 1st Edition is actually really good at having you being really good at something. Or that one thing that your character can do. Now, is that actually a bad thing? Depends. Depends on game, depends on all that other stuff. Such as technically a character that is built around... you can actually have a character that's just completely built around one spell. Even starting at first level, you can technically have a character that's just revolved around Magic Missile, I think. Or Force Barrage, if you're a 2nd edition user. Yeah, they in 2nd edition remaster, they renamed Magic Missile to Force Barrage. Had to get away from that that Wizards of the Coast name. But yeah. Now, technically what's funny is that in Pathfinder 1st Edition, you could actually have, like, anyone be really good at one specific spell. Depending on if you can get that spell on someone's spell list. Of course, the main thing is that I know in 5th Edition, Wizards and Sorcerers have the separate spell list, but in 3.5 and in Pathfinder 1st Edition, Wizards and Sorcerers use the exact same spell list. Do note that some spells are only on the Wizard spell. There are some spells that are only useful to Wizards, and there are some spells that are only useful to Sorcerers. So those are actually those actually do make a difference. But there's actually a third class that uses, well, there's technically a fourth class. There's 4 classes that uses the sorcerer wizard spell list. One of them is an archetype. The other one is a combo class, or a hybrid class known as the Arcanist. It pretty much uses the preparation of the wizard with the versatile spell casting of the spontaneous spell casting of a sorcerer. I think that's how it runs, if I remember correctly. And it's that one thing that, like, in first edition, you can have any character be good at just about anything. And no class is really better at one thing than another. Some classes are better suited for specific tasks than others. But I think this is the truth for 5th edition. But for context, I'm just going to discuss about like the first 11 classes that exists in the first edition in the core rulebook. Like all of our full bad class marshals, which is barbarian, fighter, paladin, and ranger. Out of all of those, each one has a fantasy, and each one has a somewhat of a niche that they can fill. Paladins are generally one of the more defensive-oriented classes, just based off of their spell list. But they're also the original mounted combat build, or mounted combat class. And 3.5, Paladin used to only be... Paladin at 4th level used to get a mount, which functioned as a druid's animal companion. And yes, druids were the ones that had animal companions. Hunters also could only get an animal companion in 3.5. And it still shows that, like, the stereotypical hunter, like, is the beast, in 5th edition is the Beastmaster. The one that you get the animal companion, and it's honestly not really that great. I don't actually know if it's any better in 2024 or not, but I just remember in 2014 it was not great. Mainly because it used up your action, or your attack action for some reason. And I don't know why they did it like that. Because in all other editions, it just functioned on your turn, on its own turn. But I guess they were trying to get away from players having more than one turn, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Fighter is, I would say, considered the most versatile of the classes, of the martial classes. The only reason I say that is because a fighter, if you take 20 levels of fighter in Pathfinder 1st edition, you get 21 feats. Or 22. I think it's 21. It's 21 feats. Because you get 2 at 1st level, and then you get a feat every single level. So you have 21 feats. 11 of them have to be combat feats. 10 of them can be any other feat. But that is how versatile the fighter is. And there are also some fighter-specific feats. Feats that fighters can take. Many of them are okay, and many of them are actually great. Depending on the campaign, you can build a fighter for just about anything. Fighter generally has can easily have the highest AC, but that's only because in Pathfinder 1st edition, fighters got access to heavy armor and access to all types of shields, and there are 4 different types of shields in Pathfinder 1st edition. There's light armor, medium armor, heavy armor. And then there's the buckler, the light shield, the heavy shield, and then the tower shield. Technically, I think it's just technically. But out of all the classes, that's the only one that actually gets access to tower shields without archetypes. And a tower shield has +4 to AC, so a fighter can have a very high AC starting at later levels. But of course, later levels AC isn't really what you're worried about, given that later level saves become way more important, such as your will save or your reflex save. The fortitude save, I don't know. Fortitude saves are a bit weird because it's one of those saves that you really can't dedicate a character to. You could, but Fortitude uses con, and con's generally not a high stat for most characters. Most characters, it probably goes up to 14. Some characters, it probably only goes up to 12, which means it's not great. And of course, if you're playing a spellcaster, generally your Fortitude save sucks anyway. By sucks, I mean it's just not as high as other classes. Characters with the highest Fortitude save is actually Paladin. Paladin surprisingly has the best saves in the game. The reason is because so out of all the martials, Paladin has the best saves out of all of the martials. It has the best reflex save. Do know when by martial I mean a class with a full BAB. Although I guess you technically would say Paladin and Ranger are spellcasters, but they're martial spellcasters because they're technically 1/3. They're a third caster. They're not half casters because they don't go up to 5th level. They go up to 4th level. We consider those third casters. 1/3 caster. Actually, a lot higher than I thought. But yeah, Paladins at 2nd level get a ability known as Divine Grace, which allows you to add your Charisma modifier to saves. Also, Pathfinder 1st Edition is when Paladins were changed from a character that needed like good wisdom, good charisma, good strength, and good con in order to even do anything, to just needing strength, con, and charisma. Or dex, con, and charisma if you wanted to play a dex-based Paladin, which you could. You can play a dex-based anything. Barbarian actually... Normal Barbarian, you really can't. Barbarian was the quintessential I am Rage, I am Strength. I get strength bonuses, that kind of thing. Because Rage actually gave you a morale bonus to your strength score. And con score. Yeah, and con score. So there were things that were increased based off of raging when you raged. You also got a bonus to your will saves, which is funny. I don't know if it was if it included all will saves or if it was just. Could look it up, but I think it's all will saves. I think it was a +1 or +2 to all will saves. Which actually means that the Barbarian does have a slightly better will save while raging. But it's nowhere near as high as you would think it would. We need to be. But yeah, Barbarians were probably the best at doing, I would say, damage, but technically I think it would be more easier to say that they had the highest damage potential with two-handed weapons, just because of how weapons worked in Pathfinder 1st Edition. Because how weapons worked in Pathfinder 1st Edition is that if you held a one-handed or two-handed weapon in two hands, you get a 1.5 times bonus. you add 1.5 times your strength modifier to damage. If you're using strength to your to calculate your to hit. Actually, I think it's always a 1.5 times your strength score. Or strength, not score, strength modifier. Because in Pathfinder 1st Edition, weapons always did damage based off of your strength. There were ways to get around it, but a general blanket rule was you needed a feat in order to use some weapons with dex, but you always used your strength modifier for damage. Which really didn't matter for rogues because rogues got access to sneak attack. Which is just one thing that many of the classes got at, which that was one thing that some of the classes got access to was sneak attack. Sneak attack is, of course, 1d6 extra damage if you are flanking an opponent. Or if the opponent is denied their dex modifier if they are considered flat-footed. Or they lose their dex modifier to their AC. And yeah, Pathfinder 1st Edition also has a lot of weird and strange rules. There's pretty much a rule for just about anything in the game. There's like 3 paragraphs on how to grapple somebody. And mainly, you can just roll a grapple check. And you're good. Until the next round, and then you gotta figure out what you got. There's a whole flowchart on how to actually figure out what you need to do. But yeah, Pathfinder 1st Edition is very, very complex. There's a rule for just about everything. There's rules for influencing opponents, or enemies, or NPCs, or people in general. There's rules for, like, building a kingdom. There's rules for combat, of course. Like, that's just what's gonna, like, come around. There's rules for jumping. There's rules for falling. There's rules for when you get hit by an object that's falling. There's rules for just about everything. I'm just trying to figure out what all the rules that, like, are not really a part of 5th edition. There's rules for flanking. Flanking is a flat +2, which I think is better than 5th edition's flanking. There's also a few other things that I'm trying to remember. There is there's also like 31 classes, and I think that's including alternate classes. There's 3 alternate classes. Also, the whole, like, what's funny is that the whole stereotype that the paladin is this, like, what is it, goody two-shoes character that doesn't allow you to do to play like chaotic or characters that kind of do whatever they want. That actually started in 2nd edition or 1st edition. I'm not sure if it's started, but the edition that actually made it more popular was 3.5, which the paladin had a code of conduct, which effectively made them the no fun police. Which is why a lot of people didn't play Paladin. Paladin that was one of the problems that Paladin kind of had early on in D&D 3.5. Pathfinder 1st Edition did import that code of conduct, but then they fixed it by adding deity codes of conduct that the Paladin could use instead, which did help Paladins, because you no longer had to play this goody two shoes who didn't allow any fun effectively. And that was the main thing. And the code of conduct stated that you would lose all your powers if you ever committed a chaotic or evil act. That would be up to GM discretion. And if a GM actually did that without warning the player, they are a bad GM. Or maybe they want to go through a specific story beat, but if you don't discuss with your player first, then your paladin becomes a shittier paladin. Or a shitty fighter. Because the paladin loses all of their class features, all of their spells, and the only thing they keep is BAB and saves. And proficiencies. With weapons and armor. And that's it. Weapons, armor, and shields. And that's it. What's funny is that classes that you wouldn't think have a code of conduct do. The alternate class anti-paladin has a code of conduct. Yeah, I know. A anti-paladin who is chaotic evil has rules that they have to follow. Yeah, I know. That makes no sense, but it exists. The barbarian actually has a code of conduct. The main thing is that they cannot commit a lawful act. No, it's not that. They actually don't have a code of conduct. They just have a barbarian has the stipulation of they cannot change their alignment to lawful, or else they lose the rage class feature. I think that's the only thing they lose is the rage class feature. Monks have to be lawful, and if they lose if they are no longer lawful as a monk, the only thing they cannot do is go take more levels into monk without atonement, I think. Many of these require atonement. Clerics can lose their powers by going against their deity, I think is what it's considered. Pretty much if they did something that their deity didn't like or was against their deity's portfolio. So, like, say you're a worshiper of a god of death who dislikes undead or absolutely detests undead, and you went and created a skeleton or a zombie. There you go. You've just lost the access to all of your cleric powers. Also, some of them are like willingly commit. It's like willingly commit acts. And do know many of these have to be willing, which in many of those just means that you got mind controlled or something like that. You can't be held responsible for losing your abilities because dominate person is like dominating spells are actually very common like spells to have casted, because like if you look at like 3.5, I mean you got the Illithid, which has access to I think dominate person. I don't think it has access to dominate monster, but I know for certain it has access to dominate person. Although Pathfinder First Edition did not pull in psionics from 3.5, and in my honest opinion, I think they did that correctly, because instead they have what's known as psychic classes, which function kind of the same as psionics, but they're still it's still magic, so it still is affected by like anti-magic field and dispel magic and all that other stuff, instead of psionics, which were like a whole new system of casting spells or casting abilities, which from what I remember, you needed like an anti-psionic field or and like dispel psionics and something like that. And I'm like, wow, okay. So pretty much if you were psionic, your DM or GM had to throw in psionic based enemies in order for you to actually have a challenge, because some of the psionic abilities were quite powerful from what I know. I do know that they did try doing psionics in 5th edition. I don't think we actually have a character that full on uses psionics from like 3.5. But we have classes that are kind of resembling that, like the Psy Warrior and the Soul Knife and all that, which were psionic-based classes. I don't know if we actually do have any of the other ones in 5th edition or not. I just know that in Pathfinder 1st edition, those classes do not exist. Instead, they're more like Pathfinder went with a more occult version. Although psionics were kind of introduced because of a setting that was introduced in 3.5, because it was that one thing of like, if you actually read the psionic or the campaign setting, psionics were kind of like the only way to cast magic without being considered like evil, so to speak. That or being a bard. I think being a bard was also like required. Like, you could have been a bard, you could have been a psionicist or psionic. I don't know what it's actually called. Scion, I think, is what the primary like psionic based class is called. I don't really remember off the top of my head. But yeah. Then there's the... But yeah, the setting that I'm talking about is actually known as Dark Sun. It's actually a very interesting setting, but I don't really know... I don't think we're ever going to get any books on Dark Sun or any content based on Dark Sun. Only because Dark Sun is a very, very... I want to say strange, but it's definitely a not for everyone type of world and campaign setting. Mainly because the world is supposed to be extremely harsh, and classes like Wizard are very much not liked. Well, the Wizard specifically is not liked. Because it's the weirdness of how the system works, because it actually changes how Wizard works, but it only works. They only did like a few of the classes. They didn't actually introduce all of the other classes. Wizard was just the primary one. Well, yeah, Pathfinder. And to an extent, 3.5, you can make a character that pretty much does just about anything. Ranger in 1st edition did have a problem, though. And it's kind of the same problem that it did in 2014. And it was just the problem with how Favorite Enemy worked. Favorite Enemy, and it's the reason why Favorite Enemy kind of exists in 5th edition, is that, and 3.5 and to an extent Pathfinder 1st edition, Favorite Enemy gave you a bonus on attack and it's either attack or damage. I don't remember which one. I think it's both. Against a specific type of enemy, such as humanoids or outsiders or not monstrosities, monstrous humanoids, aberrations, undead, things like that. But for some of them, you actually had to pick a specific type, such as humanoids. You had to pick a specific type of humanoid, and for outsider, you had to pick a specific type of outsider. But yeah, there was also what else? I'm trying to actually think about this. There's also so there's that, meaning that if you picked a favorite enemy, you're pretty a favorite enemy that you're not going up against that often at first level. Luckily, it's not too bad, because you can get another favorite enemy a little bit later on, and you can figure out what the GM or DM is actually doing with the enemies and doing it that way. And then there's favorite terrain, which does fall into the problem of excuse me, that it is like Ranger is very much based around like the campaign that you're running or that you're going in, and there are spells that do help Ranger out. Like there's some spell, like one of the spell, the 3rd level spell, so you actually don't get it till like 13th level. So sadly, you don't get that spell very often as easily, but it's known as instant enemy, which allows you to treat a target as a favorite enemy, if it already isn't considered one. Meaning, technically, you could, in a sense, if your GM throws a boss monster that is not of one of the 4 or 5 monsters you picked for favorite enemy, there you go. You can now use instant enemy. Excuse me. Also, Paladin and Ranger. So, in Pathfinder First Edition, many classes are preparatory classes, and some of them are spontaneous classes, which is the differentiation. Bards are also not 9th level casters. They only go up to 6th level spells. They're 2/3 casters. Bard and Sorcerer were the only 2 spontaneous casters that existed in Pathfinder First Edition, at least in the core rulebook. Although Druid and Cleric both had the ability to spontaneously cast spells with their already prepared spell slots, but only on specific spells. Cleric could do it on a cure could do it for cure or inflict wounds, depending on the alignment of your deity or which channel energy you picked. If you were neutral and your deity was neutral. But there was channel positive and channel negative energy, which technically I don't think the cleric got access to something like that in 3.5. It was like what? Create or command undead, or turn. It was like turn or command undead. Those are now feats for clerics. Druids got access to this spontaneously cast summon nature's ally. 1 through 9, depending on spell slot. So, Druids could easily summon more monsters if they really wanted to, while Clerics could heal or damage enemies as much as they wanted to. Cure Wounds also harmed undead, Inflict Wounds healed undead, but harmed living. Cure Wounds heals living, but harms undead. Some creatures not considered alive or dead, such as constructs. Alive or undead, such as constructs. There's also... what else? Oh, the Sorcerer is also a spontaneous caster. Pretty much a spontaneous caster has a spells known list, and usually cannot change their spells that often. Sorcerer and Bard can change their spells at specific levels. Wizard was the only arcane caster that could get access to every single spell, but you needed like 5 spell books, which you actually had to pay for a spell book. You didn't just get a free... You got a free spell book with 100 pages in it, but in order to do anything else, after you went over 100 pages, which is 100 pages worth of spell level for spells, you would need a new spell book. And I think if you had actually done the math on every single spell that exists in Pathfinder's core rulebook for the wizard, I think it comes out to like 5 or 6 books. Because each spell uses a page equal to their spell level. So yeah. Oh, Wish is also way more powerful in First Edition Pathfinder. In Pathfinder First Edition. But there's also the thing of clerics also got a version of Wish on their own called Miracle. Clerics could actually do pretty much the same thing that Wish could do, except it was a clerical version. Druids sadly did not get that treatment, but Druids got some of the best battlefield control spells in the entire game. Druid has the best battlefield control spells. If you're looking for a Druid that does a lot of damage, I would say look for a different class, because the Druid spell list really isn't built around doing a lot of damage. It's more or less built around buffing or buffing your allies, potentially debuffing your enemies, and controlling the battlefield more than anything else. Now, wizards could also control the battlefield. I mean, conjuration wizard's a thing. Conjurers are a thing. They're effectively summoners. Sorcerers could also do it too. I mean, they have the same list as wizards. There's also a few other things. Clerics could also do it. Bards could also summon quite well, but they weren't nearly as powerful as, like, wizards or sorcerers or clerics. Druids actually got the short end of the stick when it came to the summon list, because the Summon Nature's Ally list is honestly not that great compared to the Summon Monster list. Which I think in 5th edition, they're like conjure spells. There's also... what else? You can build a character around summons. You can build a character around... you can build a character around healing your allies, but in honesty... if you can somehow negate a hit more than you can, like, heal the amount of damage, it's actually better, such as using spells like Shield of Faith, or Displacement, or Invisibility, or spells that would guarantee a miss chance over just flat out healing the damage. The issue with that is because HP in 1st edition kind of works the same way as it does in 5th edition, where normally it would be you get full HP at 1st level, and then you get half plus 1 your hit die, which is effectively average. You get your average hit die, average die rolled for your hit points every level after. So, if you're min-maxing, technically, if you were going to, like, do something like that, you would probably pick, like, Barbarian and then pick another class because Barbarian has a D12. But that's besides the point. But that's also because monsters tend to have a much higher strength score or have much higher damage numbers on average. The Trask has like 48 strength, which comes out to like a plus 14 to damage, not including the dice that are rolled, and not including if one of those natural weapons has a 0.5 or double the normal score, the damage modifier on it. Not including a crit, which crits are much nastier in 1st edition. By nastier, I mean there is a critical confirm situation, and the only reason why that's there is because some weapons have a lower crit have a lowered crit chance, or have a chance to crit on a different die roll, and some weapons have a crit multiplier that is not just ×2. Many weapons actually have a ×3, and some weapons have a ×4. Firearms in Pathfinder 1st Edition have a ×4. Things like the Scythe, I think the picks, all have ×4. Generally, a ×3 is like your battle axe. ×2 is like your swords. But your swords generally have a higher crit chance. higher crit chance. Like the longsword can crit on a roll of a 19 or a 20. The scimitar can crit on an 18 to 20, and you can get an enchantment or a feat that increases that to 15 to 20. And I think the swashbuckler can technically even increase that by one more by making it 14 to 20 for specific weapons. So yeah, you can crit often, and you can have like a 30% chance to crit instead of the usual 5 or 10 or 15. So you can actually go all the way up to a 30% chance to crit. Do note that technically, if you are doing that, yes, you can potentially crit on a natural 15, but if you but only a natural 20 is an automatic hit, not an automatic crit. It is an automatic hit in Pathfinder First Edition, which means that you still need to roll against the AC again on the critical confirm. And that's the only reason why that exists, is because weapons can crit from a 18 or 15 to 20 depending on situation. And technically for some of them, for some of the classes, not classes, but for some weapons, you can't actually get the enchantment to increase its crit range on it, because I think the enchantment states it only can be placed on slashing or piercing weapons. So if you're using a bludgeoning weapon, you have no choice but to get get the feat improved critical if you want a higher crit chance. And also, most bludgeoning weapons actually don't have a higher than 20 to crit. So you effectively double your crit chance. And improved critical always doubles your crit chance, no matter what weapon you pick. Pick scimitar, it doubles the crit chance. Pick your fists, it doubles the crit chance. Every weapon has a chance to crit on a 20, on a natural 20. Pathfinder First Edition also states that skills do not automatically fail or confirm on a 1 or a 20. The only thing that confirms or fails on a 20 are attacks and saves. Saving throws always have a chance of succeeding on a natural 20, and they always fail on a natural 1. Attacks always have a chance of hitting on a natural 20, but they always miss on a natural 1. I think in 5th edition, the only thing that it states that is on attack rolls, if I remember correctly. But there's always other things that goes on. What else? Kind of more just discussing the differences between 5th edition and Pathfinder First Edition, which is effectively the differences between Pathfinder First D&D 3.5 and 5th edition. Spell slots weren't really a thing in earlier editions. There are technically spell slots. Technically only wizards. Technically a sorcerer in 3.5 functions more like it did, and functions kind of like how the spell slot system works now. But instead of the spells known, you have spells prepared. Or yeah, instead of like preparing your spells and all that, you then cast your spells with the spell slots. That's kind of how it functions with the sorcerer. Wizard, you actually had to prepare your spells in your spell slots. So, but you had like 4 spell slots that you could do it in. But if you wanted to cast Magic Missile 4 times, you had to prepare Magic Missile 4 times in order to cast it. All classes have access to Meta Magic. You just have to pick up the right feat. Feats are way more readily available in like 3.5 and in Pathfinder First Edition. There's a meta magic that maximizes your damage roll. There's one that increases your damage output by 50%. I think it's technically all the variables by 50%. I'm not 100% certain on that one. There's ones for knocking opponents over. There's ones for affecting vermin. There's ones for affecting undead. There's ones for affecting plants. There's one... Actually, I don't think the undead one exists. I think it's just plants. There's ones so that you can cast spells without verbal components. There's ones for casting spells without somatic components. There's a feat that allows you to ignore the material component for most spells, unless it's over a gold piece, which usually if it's over a gold piece, the spell will tell you how much that material cost. Sorcerers actually get it for free. Clerics actually don't really have to worry about material components. They instead use divine foci. So do druids. Druids also use a divine focus. Druids are considered a divine caster and not a primal caster. Clerics are, of course, divine casters. Paladins are divine casters. Rangers are divine casters. Bard is considered an arcane caster. It's also the only arcane caster that gets access to cure spells. At least it was the only one that got access to cure spells that was considered an arcane caster. The witch also gets it, but yeah. The class that has the same theme as warlock is witch. By theme meaning that you pick a patron and you worship that patron, that kind of thing. Not the mechanical way. The mechanical way of just casting like a cantrip and it doing specific things is actually in a different class. It's known as kineticist, which that one actually functions more like how you would think the warlock would function when it came with like its eldritch invocations and all that. Excuse me. Wild Shape is, in my honest opinion, it could go either way. Wild Shape could go either way in 5th edition or Pathfinder 1st edition. You do get Wild Shape much later in Pathfinder 1st edition, but Pathfinder 1st edition technically just duplicates spells. Duplicate specific spells, and they last for hours per level instead of just an hour or 8 hours or whatever it is. And but that's with a lot of spells. Instead of it lasting only for like a set time, your level actually dictated how long spells lasted. Such as Mage Armor. Mage Armor, you could easily have it at 20th level, it would last 20 hours. So you could easily have a Mage Armor on, go to sleep, wake back up, and you still got Mage Armor on. There were also magic items were also way more important in like 3.5 and Pathfinder 1st edition. I don't really know how much magic items are in 2nd edition of Pathfinder. I think they're also just as important. But magic items are way more important. Mainly because that's kind of how you got all of your abilities, was from magic items. You really didn't get a lot of your abilities from classes. You did kind of, but classes weren't really the main focus on how you got your abilities. It was what magic items did you find that increased your things. And there's known as the big 6 items in Pathfinder 1st edition. It's a headband, the belt, a ring, an amulet, and weapon and armor. Those are like the big... No, hold on. It's the Cloak of Resistance, the Ring of Protection, the Amulet of Natural Armor, Belt of Physical Stat Increase, Headband, and Weapon, and Armor Enchantment, which I guess it would be big 7. But those were like the main ones. Although technically the 7th one, Weapon was actually the main, and the enhancement bonuses on gear. were like important because that kind of dictated a whole lot of things. Mainly it dictated your AC, your hit, your damage, if you overcame specific damage reductions, that kind of stuff. But yeah. And we will be back after the ad break. Alrighty, everybody's back. Where was I? Actually, don't remember. Actually, it is getting pretty late. And usually I don't just end stream right as soon as an ad break just finishes, but I think we're going to make it a little bit of an exception today. Mainly because I'm actually getting really tired, and I'm not 100% certain why I'm so tired. So we're going to go ahead and find somebody to raid. Mainly because I'm exhausted, and I'd rather just go ahead and go to bed. Because I got to wake up tomorrow. Because I got work tomorrow. Because I work all freaking week this week. So, you know what? We're going to go ahead and raid Dragoshrew. Because they are playing Cassette Beasts. And I actually haven't played that game yet. But I want to at some point. Looks fun. And we'll go ahead and give them... Yeah. So... we'll go ahead and do that. And I will see you guys later.